It was an ordinary Wednesday, or so I thought. I had been working long hours on a critical project at my job as a software developer, and my wife, Caroline, was busy with her demanding job as a nurse. We had been married for 8 years, and although things had been a bit strained recently, I chalked it up to the stresses of our respective careers. Caroline had been acting distant lately, often glued to her phone or laptop, but I assumed she was just unwinding from her shifts. That evening, I decided to surprise her by coming home early. I thought maybe we could have a nice dinner, talk, and reconnect. As I parked my car in the driveway, I noticed her car was already there. Good, I thought. Maybe this would be a perfect opportunity to surprise her. I stepped inside our house, the familiar scent of her perfume lingering in the air, and the faint hum of her favorite radio station playing in the background. As I walked towards the kitchen, I heard strange noises coming from upstairs. It sounded like Caroline, but her voice was different, more animated and lively than usual. Curiosity piqued. I quietly ascended the stairs, careful not to make any noise. The sounds grew louder as I approached our bedroom. I froze just outside the door. The voices clearer now. Caroline was talking to someone, but not on the phone. It sounded like she was having a conversation with multiple people. My heart pounded in my chest as I pressed my ear to the door, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Then, without thinking, I pushed the door open just a crack and peeked inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. Caroline was sitting on our bed, dressed provocatively with a webcam set up in front of her. She was engaging in explicit actions, performing for an audience I couldn't see. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My wife was filming a live webcam session. I felt a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief as I watched her. She was so engrossed in her performance that she didn't notice the door was slightly ajar, or that I was standing there, hidden in the shadows. I could feel the bile rising in my throat as I saw her smiling and flirting with the camera, her actions becoming more and more explicit. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was a stranger before my eyes. I stepped back, my mind reeling. I couldn't process what I had just seen. My heart was pounding, and my hands were shaking. I needed to get out of there before she noticed me. Quietly, I backed away from the door and hurried downstairs, my mind racing. What the hell was happening? How long had this been going on? And who was she performing for? I retreated to my office, slamming the door behind me. I sat at my desk, trying to steady my breathing, but the images kept replaying in my mind. I felt like my world was collapsing around me. The woman I had loved and trusted for 8 years was living a double life, right under my nose. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and lost. I needed answers. I needed to know how deep this betrayal went. I turned on my computer and began searching for any clues that might explain Caroline's behavior. I hacked into her laptop, feeling a pang of guilt, but knowing I had to find the truth. My fingers flew over the keys, navigating through her files until I found a hidden folder labeled Private. My heart sank as I opened the folder. It was filled with videos and logs of her webcam sessions. There were dozens, maybe even hundreds of videos, each one more explicit than the last. My hands shook as I clicked through them, seeing her with different men, performing acts I could barely comprehend. As I continued to search, I found a link to a website where her videos were posted. It was a well-known adult site, and her profile had thousands of followers. She had been doing this for months, maybe even years, without my knowledge. The realization hit me hard. My wife had been living a double life, deceiving me every day. I felt a wave of nausea as I scrolled through the comments on her videos. People were praising her, asking for more, and tipping her generously. It was all too much to take in. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the betrayal crushing me. How could she do this to us? To me? Determined to gather more evidence, I set up my own surveillance system. I installed cameras around the house, discreetly hidden, to capture everything that happened when I wasn't there. I needed to know the full extent of her deception. I also started to notice subtle changes in Caroline's behavior. She was more secretive, often locking herself in the bedroom or spending hours on her laptop. She would quickly close her screen whenever I walked into the room, a guilty look flashing across her face. The more I watched, the more my suspicions were confirmed. Caroline was living a lie, and I was determined to uncover the truth. I felt a mix of anger and sadness as I thought about the woman I married, the life we had built together, and the betrayal that had shattered it all. My emotions were a whirlwind, and I didn't know how to cope with the pain. The next few days were a blur of surveillance and heartbreak. I would come home from work, check the footage, and find more evidence of Caroline's double life. I watched her perform for her audience, saw the man from the videos come to our house, and heard their laughter and moans through the thin walls. Each discovery was like a knife to the heart, twisting deeper with every revelation. I knew I had to confront her, but I needed to be sure. I needed irrefutable evidence that she couldn't deny. So I bided my time, gathering as much proof as I could. I felt like a detective in my own home, piecing together the puzzle of my wife's infidelity. One evening after dinner, I decided to test the waters. I casually brought up the topic of webcamming, hinting at the possibility that someone we knew might be involved in it. Caroline's reaction was immediate. She stiffened, her eyes widening with panic, but she quickly recovered, laughing it off and denying any knowledge of such activities. I didn't press further, knowing I had caught her off guard. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had seen. I knew the time for confrontation was nearing, but I needed to catch her in the act, to have undeniable proof. The next day, I told Caroline I was going to work, but instead I hid in the backyard, waiting for her to start her broadcast. Hours passed, and then a car pulled up to the house. A man got out, the same man I had seen in the videos. My heart pounded as I watched him walk to the front door and let himself in. I waited for what felt like an eternity before I quietly made my way into the house. As I approached the bedroom, I heard Caroline's voice, louder and more animated than ever. "Ah, ah, ah!" she screamed, her voice echoing down the hallway. My hands were shaking as I pushed the door open slightly, just enough to see inside. There they were, Caroline and her lover, having sex on camera, filming a porn video. My world shattered in that moment, the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. I backed away, feeling the bile rise in my throat. I needed to get out of there, to escape the nightmare that my life had become. As I stumbled down the stairs, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. Anger, sadness, betrayal, and a deep, aching sorrow. The woman I had loved and trusted had destroyed everything, and I didn't know how to move forward. I left the house. The images of Caroline and her lover burned into my mind. I knew I had to confront her, to end this charade once and for all. But for now, I needed time to process, to grieve the loss of the life I thought I had. My journey of discovery was over, but the path to healing had just begun. I couldn't sleep that night. The scenes I'd witnessed replayed in my mind like a nightmare on an endless loop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Caroline's deceitful smile and the stranger's lustful eyes. The woman I loved had become someone I didn't recognize. My mind swirled with confusion, anger, and heartbreak. The next morning, I went through my usual routine mechanically, trying to maintain a facade of normalcy. Caroline was already up, acting as if nothing had happened. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and asked if I wanted breakfast. I declined, my stomach too churned up to eat. As she left for work, I watched her drive away, feeling the weight of her betrayal heavy on my shoulders. I took the day off from work, claiming I was feeling under the weather. In truth, I couldn't bear the thought of sitting in my office pretending everything was fine. Instead, I focused on uncovering the full extent of Caroline's deceit. I returned to my office, determined to dig deeper into her hidden life. I powered up my computer and navigated back to the hidden folder on Caroline's laptop. The videos I had already seen were horrifying enough, but I knew there had to be more. I meticulously combed through each file, documenting dates, times, and the participants involved. Each click of the mouse felt like a dagger in my heart, but I pressed on, driven by a need to know the whole truth. As I delved deeper, I found logs of her webcam sessions, detailing the time she was online and the money she had earned. It was staggering. She had made thousands of dollars, all while pretending to be the loving wife I thought I knew. I felt a mix of anger and disgust as I realized just how long this had been going on. My search led me to a link to the website where Caroline's videos were posted. With a deep breath, I clicked on it. Her profile page loaded, displaying a gallery of explicit content that made my stomach churn. The profile had thousands of followers, all eagerly awaiting her next performance. I scrolled through the comments, each one more degrading than the last. My heart ached as I read the praise and requests from strangers who had been watching my wife. Determined to gather concrete evidence, I set up a surveillance system around the house. Hidden cameras in the bedroom, living room, and even the kitchen. I needed to know everything that happened when I wasn't around. It felt invasive and wrong, but my trust had been shattered, and I had no other option. Days turned into a blur as I monitored the footage. I watched Caroline's secret life unfold before my eyes, each day revealing new depths of betrayal. She would come home from work, greet me with a smile, and then disappear into the bedroom to set up her webcam. The man from the videos often visited, their encounters becoming more frequent and intimate. Every kiss, every touch, felt like a knife twisting in my gut. As I watched, I began to notice subtle changes in Caroline's behavior. She was more secretive, always locking the door behind her, or turning up the volume on her music to mask any sounds. She spent hours on her laptop, quickly closing it whenever I walked into the room. Her phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, was now always by her side, its screen facing down. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. My home, once a sanctuary, had become a prison filled with lies and deceit. Each discovery left me feeling more isolated and betrayed. The woman I had vowed to love and cherish had destroyed everything we had built together, and I didn't know how to confront her without losing control. One evening, after dinner, I decided to test the waters. I casually brought up the topic of webcamming, hinting that someone we knew might be involved in it. Caroline's reaction was immediate. She stiffened, her eyes widening with panic, but she quickly recovered, laughing it off and denying any knowledge of such activities. I didn't press further, knowing I had caught her off guard. Her denial only confirmed my suspicions further. That night, as Caroline slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced with thoughts of what I had seen, the betrayal I had uncovered, and the confrontation that loomed ahead. I knew the time for action was nearing, but I needed undeniable proof to confront her. The next day, I told Caroline I was going to work, but instead hid in the backyard, waiting for her to start her broadcast. Hours passed, each minute stretching into an eternity. Finally, a car pulled up to the house. My heart pounded as I watched the man from the videos step out and make his way to the front door. I waited for what felt like an eternity before quietly making my way into the house. As I approached the bedroom, I heard Caroline's voice, louder and more animated than ever. "Ah! Ah! Ah!" she screamed, her voice echoing down the hallway. My hands shook as I pushed the door open slightly, just enough to see inside. There they were, Caroline and her lover, having sex on camera, filming a porn video. My world shattered in that moment, the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. The betrayal was complete, and I had all the evidence I needed. I backed away, feeling the bile rise in my throat. I needed to get out of there, to escape the nightmare that my life had become. As I stumbled down the stairs, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. Anger, sadness, betrayal, and a deep, aching sorrow. The woman I had loved and trusted had destroyed everything, and I didn't know how to move forward. I left the house. The images of Caroline and her lover burned into my mind. I knew I had to confront her, to end this charade once and for all. But for now, I needed time to process, to grieve the loss of the life I thought I had. My journey of discovery was over, but the path to healing had just begun. I couldn't bear to stay in the house any longer. I drove aimlessly for hours, trying to escape the tormenting images burned into my mind. My thoughts raced, vacillating between overwhelming sorrow and seething anger. I had loved Caroline with every fiber of my being, and she had repaid that love with deception and betrayal. Eventually, I parked my car at a secluded spot by the lake where Caroline and I had once spent happy weekends together. The serene beauty of the water, shimmering under the setting sun, was a cruel reminder of the love we once shared. I sat there, staring blankly at the horizon, feeling as though my heart had been ripped out of my chest. As night fell, I resolved that I couldn't run forever. I needed to confront Caroline and end this nightmare. Steeling myself, I drove back to the house, my emotions a stormy mix of resolve and heartbreak. The house was dark when I arrived, a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. Caroline was likely asleep, blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my office, reviewing the footage I had gathered. Each video, each log, was a dagger to my heart, but it solidified my resolve. I knew that when the sun rose, I would confront her with the truth. Morning came, and with it, a sense of grim determination. Caroline greeted me with her usual smile, but I could see a hint of nervousness in her eyes. She knew something was off. I waited until she had her breakfast and settled into her morning routine before making my move. "Caroline, we need to talk," I said, my voice as steady as I could manage. She looked up from her coffee, a hint of fear flashing across her face. "Sure, Tom. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I know about the webcam sessions," I said, watching her reaction closely. For a moment, she froze, the color draining from her face. "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've seen the videos, Caroline. I know everything," I replied, pulling out my phone and playing one of the videos for her. Her eyes widened in horror as she watched herself on the screen. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she started to shake her head. "Tom, I can explain," she stammered, but I cut her off. "No more lies, Caroline. I want the truth. How long has this been going on?" She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry, Tom. It started about a year ago. I never meant for it to go this far. It was just supposed to be a way to make some extra money." I felt a surge of anger. "Extra money? You destroyed our marriage for some extra money?" She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "It wasn't just about the money, Tom. I felt so empty. I needed something to make me feel alive." Her words cut deep. "And you thought cheating on me, broadcasting yourself to strangers, was the answer?" She shook her head, her sobs intensifying. "I didn't think it would hurt you like this. I didn't think you'd find out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, if I hadn't found out, you'd just keep doing it? Keep lying to me?" She didn't answer, her silence speaking volumes. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal so intense that it was almost suffocating. I needed to get away from her to clear my head. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice cold and distant. "I need time to think." "Tom, please don't go," she pleaded, reaching out to me, but I pulled away, not wanting her touch. "I can't stay here, Caroline, not after everything you've done." I packed a bag and left, needing space and distance to process everything. I drove to Mark's place, my best friend since college. He had always been there for me, and I hoped he would be now. Mark opened the door, a look of concern on his face. "Tom, what's going on? You look like hell." I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a rush of emotion. Mark listened, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. "Man, I don't know what to say," he finally said, shaking his head. "That's some heavy shit." "I just needed to get out of there," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't know what to do." Mark put a hand on my shoulder. "You can stay here as long as you need. We'll figure this out." The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights and agonizing memories. Caroline tried to call me repeatedly, leaving messages filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. But I couldn't bring myself to listen to them. The pain was too raw, too overwhelming. Mark encouraged me to seek legal advice, and reluctantly, I agreed. I contacted a lawyer, explaining the situation and showing him the evidence I had gathered. He was sympathetic, assuring me that I had a strong case for divorce. But the thought of ending my marriage, of admitting that it was truly over, was almost too much to bear. Meanwhile, Caroline continued to reach out, her messages growing increasingly desperate. She even showed up at Mark's house one evening, begging to talk to me. Mark intercepted her at the door, telling her that I needed space. She left in tears, and I watched from the window, my heart aching. Despite everything, a part of me still loved her. The woman I married was still there, somewhere beneath the lies and betrayal. But I couldn't see a way forward. The trust was shattered, the bond we shared broken beyond repair. One evening, Mark and I sat in his living room, beers in hand, talking about everything but the elephant in the room. Finally, he broke the silence. "Tom, you need to decide what you want to do. You can't keep living in limbo like this." "I know," I said, staring into my beer. "I just don't know if I can face her again." "You have to," Mark said gently. "For your own sake, you need closure." I knew he was right. The next day I called Caroline and agreed to meet her at the house. My stomach churned with anxiety as I drove there, dreading the confrontation. Caroline was waiting for me in the living room, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. As I entered, she stood up, her eyes filled with hope and fear. "Tom, thank you for coming," she said softly. "Let's just get this over with," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. We sat down, and she began to talk, explaining how she had felt lost and disconnected, how the webcamming had started as a way to fill the void. She insisted that the man from the videos meant nothing to her, that it was all just a way to escape. I listened, my heart heavy with sorrow. When she finished, I took a deep breath and spoke. "Caroline, I loved you with everything I had, but what you did, I can't forgive that. You broke my trust, and you broke my heart. I don't see how we can move forward from this." She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "Tom, please give me another chance. I can change, I can make this right." But I knew it was too late. The damage was done. "I'm sorry, Caroline, I can't do this anymore." I stood up and walked out of the house, the finality of my words hanging in the air. As I drove away, I felt a strange mix of relief and despair. The confrontation was over, but the road to healing was just beginning. My journey through the depths of betrayal had come to a turning point. There was no going back, only forward, into an uncertain future. But as I left behind the wreckage of my marriage, I hoped that somewhere ahead, there would be a chance for peace and redemption. Leaving the house, I felt like a ghost, my body moving through the motions while my mind and heart were in turmoil. The confrontation had torn me apart, but it was necessary. I couldn't live a lie anymore. I needed to find myself again, to rebuild from the wreckage of our marriage. Mark's place became my refuge. He welcomed me with open arms, his home offering a sense of safety and solace that I desperately needed. But even his unwavering support couldn't drown out the emotional chaos inside me. The first night, I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Memories of Caroline and our life together flooded my mind. Her laughter, the way she used to look at me, our dreams for the future. All of it now felt tainted by her betrayal. I couldn't reconcile the woman I loved with the person she had become. The next few days were a blur of anguish and confusion. I wandered aimlessly through Mark's house, my thoughts a tangled mess. Caroline's calls and messages went unanswered. I couldn't bear to hear her voice, to listen to her excuses and pleas. Every time my phone buzzed, it felt like a stab to the heart. Mark was a rock, always there with a comforting word or a shoulder to lean on. He urged me to see a lawyer, to take the necessary steps towards a divorce. But the thought of ending my marriage, of making it official, was almost too much to bear. Still, I knew he was right. I couldn't live in limbo forever. I met with the lawyer, a sympathetic woman named Laura, who listened to my story with a mixture of empathy and professionalism. I showed her the evidence I had gathered, the videos and logs that documented Caroline's double life. Laura assured me that I had a strong case, that the divorce proceedings would likely go in my favor. But even her reassurances couldn't ease the pain in my chest. The legal process was a nightmare. Every document I signed, every meeting with Laura, felt like another nail in the coffin of my marriage. Caroline, for her part, tried to fight it. She hired a lawyer and contested the divorce, claiming that I had neglected her emotionally and driven her to seek attention elsewhere. Her lies and manipulation were infuriating, but I couldn't let her get away with it. I provided Laura with all the evidence I had, determined to see this through. Meanwhile, Caroline's attempts to reach out grew increasingly desperate. She showed up at Mark's house again, pounding on the door and screaming for me to come out. Mark stood firm, refusing to let her in, while I hid in the back room, my heart breaking at the sound of her voice. Despite everything, a part of me still loved her, and it was tearing me apart. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. The pain, the anger, the confusion, it all came crashing down. I grabbed a bottle of whiskey from Mark's kitchen and locked myself in the guest room. As the alcohol burned its way down my throat, the tears finally came. I cried for the life I had lost, for the woman I thought I knew, for the future that would never be. Mark found me hours later, slumped on the floor, the empty bottle beside me. He didn't say a word, just helped me up and got me into bed. The next morning, he sat me down and spoke softly but firmly. "Tom, you can't keep doing this to yourself. You need to move forward to find a way to heal. I know it's hard, but you have to let go. His words hit home. I realized that drowning in my misery wouldn't change anything. I had to find a way to move on, to rebuild my life without Caroline. But how? How do you pick up the pieces when everything you knew has been shattered? I started by focusing on my work. I threw myself into projects, taking on extra tasks and staying late at the office. The routine and the distraction helped, but it couldn't fill the void completely. Nights were the hardest, the silence amplifying my loneliness and grief. Laura kept me updated on the divorce proceedings. Caroline's lawyer tried to paint her as the victim, claiming that her actions were a result of my emotional neglect. But the evidence was damning. The videos, the logs, the conversations, they all told a different story. The judge saw through her lies, and slowly the case began to turn in my favor. Despite the progress, the process was grueling. Every court date, every interaction with Caroline's legal team felt like reopening old wounds. I avoided seeing her whenever possible, not trusting myself to stay composed in her presence. The pain was still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. One evening, after another draining meeting with Laura, I returned to Mark's house to find Caroline waiting outside. Her eyes were red from crying, her face drawn and desperate. "Tom, please," she begged as I approached. "Just talk to me. Let me explain." I stopped a few feet away, my heart pounding. "There's nothing left to say, Caroline. Please, Tom. I know I messed up, but I love you. We can fix this." "Love?" I spat the word, my anger boiling over. "You call what you did love? You destroyed us, Caroline. You destroyed me." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy. "I was lost, Tom. I didn't know how to cope. Please, just give me another chance." "Another chance?" I laughed bitterly. "You think this is something we can just patch up? You think a few apologies will make everything right?" "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I need you." "You need me?" I shouted, my fury erupting. "You needed me when you were screwing that guy on camera? You needed me when you were lying to my face every day?" She flinched as if struck, but I couldn't stop. "You destroyed our marriage, Caroline. You destroyed everything we built together. I can't forgive you for that. Tom, just go," I said, my voice hollow. "Leave me alone. We're done." I turned and walked away, leaving her sobbing in the driveway. Mark met me at the door, a look of concern on his face. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "No," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I will be." As the weeks passed, the divorce moved closer to finalization. Caroline's attempts to contact me dwindled, her messages growing more resigned. I focused on healing, on finding a way to move forward. It wasn't easy, but with Mark's support and the knowledge that I was doing the right thing, I began to see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, anger, and a faint sense of hope. It was the end of a chapter, but also the beginning of a new one. As I walked out of the courthouse, the weight of the past finally started to lift from my shoulders. Mark was waiting for me outside, a supportive smile on his face. "How do you feel?" "Free," I said, taking a deep breath, "and ready to start over." It was a long road ahead, but I knew I could make it. The betrayal had shattered me, but it hadn't destroyed me. I was still standing, and that was something. With each step, I moved closer to healing, to finding peace and rebuilding my life. And in that, there was hope. Despite the sense of closure that came with the finalized divorce, the emotional fallout was far from over. I was left with a void, an emptiness that threatened to consume me. Every day was a struggle to hold myself together, to find a reason to keep moving forward. Mark was my constant support, always there with a word of encouragement or a listening ear. But even his unwavering presence couldn't completely drown out the pain. Nights were the hardest. Alone in the darkness, the memories of Caroline's betrayal haunted me. Her laughter, her touch, our dreams, they all felt like cruel illusions now. One night, after tossing and turning for hours, I decided to delve back into the footage I had collected. Maybe there was something I had missed, something that could help me understand why she had done this. I powered up my laptop and began reviewing the videos and logs once more, each image and sound a painful reminder of the woman I thought I knew. As I sifted through the files, I came across a video I hadn't noticed before. It was dated just a few weeks before our confrontation. With a deep breath, I clicked play. The screen flickered to life, showing Caroline and her lover in a dimly lit room. My heart pounded as I watched them, the familiar sting of betrayal gnawing at me. But then, something caught my attention. They weren't just performing for the camera. They were talking. I turned up the volume, straining to hear their conversation over the sound of my own racing heartbeat. "I can't believe he's still buying this," the man said, a smirk on his face. "You think he'll ever find out?" Caroline laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that sent chills down my spine. "Tom's clueless. He'll never know. Besides, even if he does, we've got our bases covered." "What do you mean?" the man asked, raising an eyebrow. Caroline's expression darkened. "We've got enough dirt on him to make sure he doesn't fight back. If he tries anything, we'll just turn the tables on him." My blood ran cold as the implications of her words sank in. They had planned this. They had conspired to cover their tracks and ensure that I wouldn't be able to fight back. The realization hit me like a freight train. Caroline and her lover had intended to frame me if I ever discovered their affair. Rage surged through me, a white-hot fury that threatened to consume everything in its path. I clenched my fists, my knuckles turning white as I struggled to contain the torrent of emotions. I had to do something. I couldn't let them get away with this. I grabbed my phone and called Laura, my lawyer. She answered groggily, clearly woken from sleep. "Tom? What's going on?" "I found something," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Something big. Caroline and her lover. They planned to frame me if I found out about their affair. I've got it on video." Laura was silent for a moment, processing my words. "Tom, are you sure?" "Positive," I replied, sending her the video file. "You need to see this. We have to do something." "I'll take a look right now," she said, her tone serious. "Stay by your phone. I'll call you back as soon as I've seen it." The next few minutes felt like an eternity. I paced back and forth, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge, justice, and the sheer audacity of Caroline's betrayal. How could she do this to me? How could she plot something so vile, so twisted? Finally, my phone rang. Laura's voice was steady, but I could hear the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Tom, this changes everything. We need to reopen the case. This evidence is damning. It proves that Caroline and her lover were conspiring against you. We can use this to clear your name and expose their deceit." A mix of relief and vindication washed over me. "What do we need to do?" "I'll file a motion to reopen the case first thing in the morning," Laura said. "In the meantime, sit tight and try to stay calm. We're going to make sure justice is served." The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, each step bringing me closer to exposing the truth. The video evidence was a bombshell, turning the case on its head. Caroline's lawyer tried to dismiss it, claiming it was taken out of context, but the judge wasn't buying it. In a dramatic courtroom showdown, the video was played for all to see. Caroline and her lover squirmed in their seats, their confidence evaporating as the truth was laid bare. The judge ordered a thorough investigation, and as more evidence came to light, it became clear that Caroline had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to protect herself at my expense. The media caught wind of the scandal, and suddenly, our private nightmare was splashed across headlines and news broadcasts. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, eager for the latest developments. It was overwhelming, but amidst the chaos, I felt a sense of vindication. The world was seeing Caroline for who she truly was. One particularly intense day in court, Caroline's lover, under immense pressure, finally cracked. He confessed to the entire scheme, implicating Caroline as the mastermind. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs, and Caroline's facade crumbled. She broke down in tears, her carefully constructed lies unraveling before everyone's eyes. The judge delivered a scathing verdict, condemning Caroline and her lover for their deceit and manipulation. My name was cleared, and I was awarded a substantial settlement for the emotional and reputational damage I had endured. But more than the money, it was the sense of justice that brought me solace. As I walked out of the courthouse, the weight of the past finally lifting from my shoulders, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, anger, and a newfound sense of hope. Mark was waiting for me, his supportive smile a beacon of stability in the storm. "How do you feel?" he asked, clapping a hand on my back. "Free," I replied, taking a deep breath, "and ready to start over." That evening, Mark and I sat on his porch, beers in hand. reflecting on everything that had happened. The stars above us were a reminder of the vastness of the world, of the endless possibilities that lay ahead. "You did it, man," Mark said, raising his bottle in a toast. "You stood up for yourself and got the justice you deserved." "It wasn't easy," I admitted, clinking my bottle against his. "But I had to do it, for my own sanity." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the cool night air a balm for my weary soul. As I gazed at the stars, I realized that this was just the beginning. The road to healing was long, but I was ready to walk it. With each step, I moved closer to finding peace, to rebuilding my life. And in that, there was hope. The relief of having my name cleared was immense, but the emotional scars left by Caroline's betrayal still ran deep. The courtroom drama had brought some measure of justice, but it hadn't erased the pain. Every night, as I lay in bed, memories of our happier times haunted me, mocking the love I had once felt so deeply. Laura had done an incredible job in court, dismantling Caroline's defense piece by piece. Her strategic mind and relentless pursuit of justice had been a beacon of hope in my darkest hours. But despite the victory, the path ahead was still uncertain. The legal battle had taken its toll on me, both emotionally and mentally. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some old files in my office, I found a photo of Caroline and me on our wedding day. We looked so happy, so full of promise and dreams for the future. I felt a pang of sadness, wondering how things had gone so terribly wrong. What had driven Caroline to such lengths of deceit? The question gnawed at me, even though I knew I'd never get a satisfactory answer. I decided to take a break and visit the lake where I had sought solace after discovering Caroline's betrayal. The place had always been a sanctuary for me, a quiet spot to reflect and find some peace. As I sat by the water, the gentle lapping of the waves soothed my troubled mind. Suddenly my phone buzzed. It was Laura, her voice carrying a mix of urgency and determination. "Tom, we need to talk. Caroline's lawyer is pushing for a settlement conference." My heart sank. The thought of facing Caroline again, of hearing her excuses and manipulations, was almost unbearable. But I knew this was part of the process. I had to see it through to the end. "All right," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "When is it?" "Tomorrow morning," Laura said. "Be prepared. They're going to try and make you out to be the bad guy again. But don't worry, we've got this." The next day I walked into the conference room, my stomach churning with anxiety. Caroline was already there, looking pale and drawn. Her lawyer sat beside her, a smug expression on his face. Laura was a calming presence at my side, her confidence unwavering. The meeting started with Caroline's lawyer presenting their terms for the settlement. They wanted me to drop the infidelity claim and agree to an equal division of assets. It was a ludicrous proposition, considering the mountain of evidence against her. But I knew this was their attempt to salvage whatever they could from the wreckage. Laura didn't even flinch. She countered every point with cold, hard facts, highlighting Caroline's deceit and the emotional turmoil she had put me through. The tension in the room was palpable as the arguments flew back and forth. Finally, Caroline spoke. Her voice was trembling, her eyes filled with tears. "Tom, please, I know I messed up, but can't we find a way to move past this? We were so good together once." Her words were like a dagger to my heart. I remembered the love we had shared, the dreams we had built together. But those memories were now tainted by her betrayal. "I can't do that, Caroline," I said, my voice cracking with emotion. "You destroyed my trust, my faith in us. There's no going back." She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Her lawyer tried to regain control of the situation, but it was clear that the tide had turned. The judge overseeing the conference could see through their desperate attempts to manipulate the narrative. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. The assets would be divided, but Caroline would receive far less than she had hoped for. The settlement was a hollow victory, a reminder of everything I had lost. But it was also a step towards closure, towards rebuilding my life. As I walked out of the courthouse, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. The legal battle was over, but the emotional journey was far from complete. I needed time to heal, to find a way to move forward. Mark was waiting for me outside, his face lighting up with a supportive smile. "How do you feel?" "Relieved," I said, taking a deep breath, "but also empty. This whole thing has taken so much out of me. Let's get out of here, Mark said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. You need a break. Some time to clear your head. We drove to a nearby bar, a familiar place where we had spent countless nights unwinding after long days at work. As we sipped our beers, Mark tried to lighten the mood with stories and jokes. But my mind kept drifting back to the confrontation with Caroline, to the pain and betrayal that had brought me to this point. Tom, Mark said, his tone turning serious, you've been through hell, but you can't let this define you. You need to find something that gives you purpose, that helps you move on. He was right. I couldn't let Caroline's actions dictate the rest of my life. I needed to find a way to rebuild, to rediscover who I was without her. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work. I took on new projects, pushed myself to learn new skills, and immersed myself in my career. The distraction helped, but it wasn't enough. I needed more than just work to fill the void. I started going to therapy, opening up about the pain and anger that had consumed me. It was a difficult process, facing my emotions head-on, but it was also liberating. I began to understand that healing wasn't about forgetting the past, but about finding a way to live with it. One evening, as I was leaving a therapy session, I ran into an old friend from college. Sarah had been a close friend during those years, and seeing her brought a rush of nostalgia. We decided to grab a coffee and catch up. As we talked, I realized how much I had missed connecting with people. Sarah listened to my story with empathy, sharing her own experiences of heartbreak and recovery. It felt good to open up, to share my pain with someone who understood. Tom, you need to find something that makes you happy, Sarah said, her eyes filled with concern. Something just for you. Her words stayed with me. I started exploring new hobbies, trying things I'd always been curious about but never had the time for. I took up hiking, finding solace in the beauty of nature. I started painting, expressing my emotions through colors and shapes. And slowly, I began to feel a sense of purpose returning. The journey wasn't easy. There were still days when the weight of the past threatened to crush me, when the memories of Caroline's betrayal were too much to bear. But with each step, I moved closer to healing, to finding peace. As the months passed, I began to see a glimmer of hope. The pain was still there, but it no longer defined me. I was more than just the man who had been betrayed. I was a survivor, a fighter, someone who had faced the worst and come out stronger. And in that realization, I found a sense of freedom. The road to healing was long, but I was ready to walk it. With each step, I moved closer to a new beginning, to a future filled with possibility. And in that, there was hope. With the legal battle behind me and a tentative sense of hope starting to take root, I found myself grappling with a new, unexpected emotion: anger. The more I reflected on Caroline's betrayal, the more I felt a burning desire for revenge. She had not only destroyed our marriage, but had also tried to frame me, to ruin my life. As much as I wanted to move on and heal, the injustice of it all gnawed at me. I needed to see her pay for what she had done. Mark noticed the change in me. One evening, as we were sitting on his porch, he broached the subject delicately. Tom, I know you're hurting, and it's natural to want some kind of retribution, but revenge can be a dangerous path. I know, I replied, my voice tinged with frustration. But I can't just let her get away with it, Mark. She needs to face the consequences of her actions. He sighed, understanding my pain but also wary of where it might lead. Just be careful. Don't let it consume you. Determined, I started to plan my revenge meticulously. I wanted to hit Caroline where it hurt the most, to expose her for the fraud she was. I began by leaking some of her explicit videos anonymously online, targeting forums and social media platforms where they would spread quickly. The backlash was immediate. Caroline lost her job, her reputation in tatters. Next, I contacted her family and friends, sending them copies of the videos and logs. The shock and disgust were palpable. Her parents were devastated, her friends appalled. Caroline's social circle crumbled, leaving her isolated and alone. It was a cruel, calculated move, but I couldn't suppress the satisfaction I felt as her world fell apart. But the most significant blow came when I exposed her to the people who had trusted her the most, her colleagues and patients. I sent the videos to her hospital's administration, ensuring that her duplicity was known to all. The hospital, fearing scandal and legal repercussions, acted swiftly. Caroline was blacklisted, her career in nursing effectively over. As I watched the fallout from my actions, I felt a mix of emotions. The satisfaction of seeing Caroline face the consequences of her betrayal was tempered by a growing sense of emptiness. Revenge, I realized, wasn't the answer. It couldn't heal the wounds she had inflicted or fill the void left by our broken marriage. One night, as I was lying in bed, I found myself crying. The release of emotions was cathartic but also left me feeling hollow. I had achieved my goal, but it hadn't brought me the peace I had hoped for. Mark's words echoed in my mind. Don't let it consume you. I needed to let go of the anger, to find a way to move forward. Revenge had been a temporary fix, a way to vent my pain. But it wasn't a solution. It was time to focus on myself, to rebuild my life in a meaningful way. I threw myself into work with renewed vigor. My career as a software developer had always been a source of pride, and I decided to take it to the next level. I started attending advanced courses, learning new programming languages, and diving into cutting-edge technologies. The challenges and the sense of accomplishment they brought helped me find a new sense of purpose. As I gained recognition in my field, opportunities started to present themselves. I was invited to speak at conferences, to collaborate on high-profile projects, and eventually to start my own tech company. The thrill of building something from the ground up, of creating a product that could change lives, was exhilarating. My company grew rapidly, attracting investors and talented individuals who shared my vision. Within a few years, we had become a major player in the tech industry, our innovative solutions gaining widespread acclaim. The financial success that followed was beyond anything I had ever imagined. I became a millionaire, my efforts and perseverance paying off in ways I hadn't dared to dream. But it wasn't just the money that brought me fulfillment. It was the knowledge that I had rebuilt my life, that I had risen from the ashes of my past. I had found a new identity, a new sense of self-worth that wasn't tied to Caroline or her betrayal. With my newfound wealth, I decided to give back to the community. I set up a foundation to support victims of infidelity and betrayal, providing them with the resources and support they needed to heal and rebuild their lives. The stories of the people we helped were a constant reminder of my journey, of the strength it took to move forward. One day, as I was leaving my office, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Caroline. She had heard about my success and wanted to meet. I felt a pang of anger, but also curiosity. What could she possibly want now? We met at a quiet cafe, the atmosphere tense and charged with unspoken words. Caroline looked worn and tired, a shadow of the woman I had once loved. "Tom, I know I have no right to ask this, but I wanted to apologize," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I hurt you deeply, and I've paid the price for my actions. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Her words stirred a mix of emotions in me. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of the pain she had caused. But another part of me felt a strange sense of closure. I had moved on, found success and fulfillment, while she was still grappling with the consequences of her choices. "I appreciate your apology, Caroline," I said, my voice steady. "But there's no going back. I've moved on with my life, and you need to do the same." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I just needed you to know." As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of finality. The chapter with Caroline was truly over, and I was free to embrace the future with open arms. The journey had been long and painful, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next. And in that, there was hope. Leaving the cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Caroline's apology, though late and insufficient, had brought a sense of closure I hadn't expected. It was time to focus fully on the future, to channel my energy into building a life that was defined by my own terms, not by the ghosts of my past. With my tech company thriving, and the foundation making a tangible difference in people's lives, I began to turn my attention inward. My emotional scars were deep, and I knew that true healing required more than just professional success. It was about rediscovering who I was outside the realm of my achievements and my past relationship. I started with therapy, something I had resisted for too long. Talking to a professional helped me unravel the complex emotions that had been festering inside me. The sessions were grueling at times, forcing me to confront uncomfortable truths and buried pain, but they were also profoundly liberating. Slowly, I began to understand that my self-worth wasn't tied to Caroline's betrayal, that I was deserving of happiness and peace. Physical fitness became another cornerstone of my self-improvement journey. I joined a gym and hired a personal trainer, committing to a rigorous routine that pushed my limits. The physical exertion was a perfect outlet for my lingering anger and frustration. Each drop of sweat felt like a step towards reclaiming my body and my confidence. I even took up martial arts, finding solace and discipline in the ancient practices. In addition to physical fitness, I embraced mindfulness and meditation. I started attending yoga classes and learned to center myself, to find peace in the present moment. The quietude of meditation became a sanctuary, a place where I could reflect on my journey and cultivate a sense of inner calm. One evening, after a particularly intense meditation session, I found myself reflecting on my relationship with Mark. He had been my rock through the darkest times, his unwavering support a beacon of light. I decided it was time to give back, to show my appreciation for his steadfast friendship. "Hey, Mark," I called him one night. "How about we take a trip, just the two of us, like old times?" "A trip?" He sounded intrigued. "Where are we thinking?" "Somewhere to unwind and have fun. Cancun, maybe? We could use a break from all the stress." Mark laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "That sounds like a fantastic idea, Tom. Let's do it." A few weeks later, we found ourselves on a sun-drenched beach in Cancun, the turquoise waters stretching out before us. The trip was exactly what we needed. We spent our days lounging by the ocean, playing beach volleyball, and exploring the local culture. The nights were filled with laughter and camaraderie, a welcome reprieve from the pressures of our lives back home. One evening, as we sat on the beach watching the sunset, Mark turned to me, his expression thoughtful. "Tom, I'm really proud of you. You've come a long way since everything happened with Caroline." "Thanks, Mark," I replied, feeling a swell of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You've rebuilt your life in an incredible way," he continued. "But remember, it's okay to let people in again. Don't let the past stop you from finding new happiness." His words struck a chord. I realized that while I had focused so much on healing and rebuilding, I had kept my heart guarded, afraid to let anyone close. It was time to change that. After returning from Cancun, I made a conscious effort to open myself up to new experiences and connections. I attended social events, reconnected with old friends, and even went on a few dates. It was daunting at first, but with each interaction, I felt a bit more at ease. I was learning to trust again, to believe that I could find love and companionship without fear of betrayal. One night, at a charity event for my foundation, I met Emily. She was vibrant and kind, with a smile that lit up the room. We started talking, and I found myself drawn to her warmth and genuine interest in the work I was doing. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and by the end of the evening, I felt a connection I hadn't experienced in years. We began seeing each other regularly, our bond growing stronger with each passing day. Emily was patient and understanding, never pushing me to move faster than I was comfortable with. She respected my past and supported my journey towards healing. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future, about the possibility of finding love again. As my relationship with Emily blossomed, so did my sense of self-worth. I realized that I had been right to focus on my healing, but that it was equally important to embrace new opportunities for happiness. Life was about balance, about finding joy in the midst of pain, and growth in the wake of adversity. My company continued to thrive, and my foundation expanded its reach, helping more people than ever before. I took pride in the work we were doing, knowing that it was making a real difference. The stories of those we helped were a constant reminder of my own journey, of the strength it took to overcome the past and build a brighter future. One day, as I was looking out over the city from my office window, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. "Proud of you, brother. You've come a long way. Let's grab dinner soon." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the people who had stood by me, for the new beginnings that had come my way. My journey was far from over, but I was on the right path, surrounded by love and support. With each passing day, I moved closer to a future filled with promise and possibility. I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever came next. And in that, there was hope. Life was looking up. My company was thriving. My personal life was steadily improving. And for the first time in years, I felt genuinely optimistic about the future. Emily had become an integral part of my life, her unwavering support and warmth providing a stark contrast to the turmoil I had endured with Caroline. One morning, as I sat in my office sipping coffee and reviewing some reports, my phone rang. It was David, one of the investors who had supported my company from the beginning. "Tom, I have some exciting news," David said, his voice buzzing with enthusiasm. "We've just secured a major contract with a top-tier tech firm. This is going to skyrocket our growth." I felt a surge of exhilaration. "That's incredible, David. This could be a game-changer for us." "It absolutely is. We need to prepare for an influx of new projects and opportunities. This is what we've been working towards." The next few months were a whirlwind. The new contract brought in substantial revenue, and our company's reputation soared. We expanded our team, bringing in some of the brightest minds in the industry. The pace was intense, but I thrived on the challenge, driven by a sense of purpose and the desire to make our company the best it could be. One evening, after a particularly successful presentation to a group of potential clients, I sat in my office reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. From the depths of betrayal and despair, I had rebuilt my life and achieved more than I had ever dreamed. The financial success was a testament to my resilience and hard work. As the company grew, so did my personal wealth. I found myself in a position I had never imagined, financially independent and free to pursue my passions without constraint. With the wealth came new opportunities to give back, and I decided to invest even more in my foundation. We expanded our programs, reaching out to more people who had been affected by infidelity and betrayal, providing them with the support and resources they needed to rebuild their lives. One Saturday afternoon, as I was working on a new initiative for the foundation, Emily walked into my office, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Tom, I have an idea," she said, sitting down across from me. "Why don't we organize a charity gala? It could be a great way to raise funds and awareness for the foundation." I leaned back in my chair, considering her suggestion. "That's a fantastic idea, Emily. We could bring in some high-profile guests and really make an impact." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and over the next few weeks, we threw ourselves into planning the event. The gala would be a celebration of the foundation's achievements and a testament to the resilience of those who had overcome their hardships. The night of the gala arrived, and the venue was breathtaking. The grand ballroom was adorned with elegant decorations, and the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. As Emily and I mingled with the guests, I felt a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. During the evening, I took to the stage to deliver a speech. Looking out at the sea of faces, I felt a wave of emotion. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This foundation was born out of my personal journey through pain and betrayal, but it has grown into something much bigger. It has become a beacon of hope for those who are struggling, a reminder that no matter how dark the times may seem, there is always a way forward." The audience erupted in applause, and as I stepped down from the stage, Emily greeted me with a warm embrace. "You did amazing, Tom," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." The gala was a resounding success, raising significant funds for the foundation and bringing together a community of supporters. It was a night of celebration and hope, a testament to the power of resilience and the human spirit. In the weeks that followed, the momentum continued. The company secured more contracts, and our foundation's reach expanded even further. I found myself in the position of a leader, not just in business, but also in the community. My story resonated with people, inspiring them to overcome their own challenges and pursue their dreams. One evening, as I was preparing for another business trip, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was Caroline. Curiosity and a hint of trepidation filled me as I read her message. "Tom, I heard about your success. I just wanted to say congratulations. You've come a long way." I stared at the message for a moment, my emotions a mix of surprise and indifference. Caroline's words no longer had the power to hurt me. I had moved on, built a new life, and found happiness on my own terms. I didn't respond to her message. Instead, I focused on the present, on the life I had created. Emily and I had grown closer, our relationship deepening with each passing day. She was my confidant, my partner, and my source of joy. Together, we navigated the challenges and triumphs that came our way. One weekend, as we were hiking through a picturesque trail, Emily turned to me, her eyes filled with a thoughtful gaze. Tom, have you ever thought about writing a book? A book? I laughed. About what? About your journey. Your story is incredible, and I think it could inspire so many people. I considered her suggestion. It was true that my journey had been one of profound transformation, from the depths of betrayal to the heights of success and fulfillment. That's not a bad idea. Maybe I will. Over the next few months, I started writing. The process was cathartic, allowing me to reflect on my experiences and share the lessons I had learned. The book took shape, a testament to resilience, determination, and the power of finding one's path, despite life's challenges. When the book was published, the response was overwhelming. It resonated with readers, many of whom reached out to share their own stories of overcoming adversity. I was humbled and grateful, knowing that my journey had the power to inspire and uplift others. As I stood on the stage at a book signing event, looking out at the faces of those who had been touched by my story, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. My life had come full circle, from the depths of despair to the heights of success and personal growth. And in that moment, surrounded by support and love, I realized that the journey was far from over. There were new challenges to face, new heights to reach, and new dreams to pursue. With Emily by my side and a community of supporters behind me, I was ready for whatever the future held. And in that, there was hope.